Councillor Horn.
I'd just like to add an addition for the interviews for our Director of Public Works position.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Where would that go in the agenda?
Other business.
Other business? Okay, that's where we'll put
the
it.
end of the resolutions.
Okay. Any prioritization that anyone sees is going to be needed? No? Okay. All in favor of the agenda as amended? That's carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor McCann, Councillor Bachman. The minutes of the regular council meeting held November 19th, 2019 be approved as circulated. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Questions of staff? Councillor Keith.
Yes, Mr. Brown, how would you say things went in respect to our last snowfall, and how did you feel? Was there any change after the request of patience for any of the taxpayers when snow falls?
Through your worship, the snow event that you're talking about started on Sunday afternoon. I think the staff did an excellent job at moving snow. It was a little slower than usual because of the amount of snow that had fallen. But we did have a truck out Sunday afternoon till 11:30 at night, and then we had a full crew out at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think the crews did an awesome job, and they continue to do so. With regards to patience of individuals, we had a few phone calls. One in particular that was quite, I'll say, rude and extremely abusive to staff, and it's unfortunate that that happened because it made for a difficult time in the office. You know, our staff don't have to deal with things like that, but yet they seem to have to put up with certain individuals who want to make a point, even though they're not listening to the reality of us, about things that we have to do. We had someone take a swing with a shovel at the truck wing on its way by. The wing won, the shovel lost. I will say that the next time that happens, I've instructed my staff to contact the OPP. We're still having people pushing and blowing snow on the road after it's been plowed, which is also which is an offense in the Highway Traffic Act. And we're still having problems up in Belvedere because it's very difficult still to get through with a 7-ton. But it's the beginning of the year. It's a learning curve for everybody. Everybody has to be patient. I'm really asking people to be patient. I can't emphasize that enough. And I urge council to take a turn in the wing seat this winter, just so you know what our staff are up against. It's a real experience for us for you to do. I think it's a great idea, and I would be more than happy to arrange it before December 31st.
Well, Mr. Brown, I'm quite willing to take a seat there. I'd like the opportunity, so I'm sure we can connect. I'm willing to do it.
Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to taking the wing, I'm definitely willing to participate in that, so please communicate with me to see what arrangements can be made. But in regards to Belvedere, I noticed that on our tracker document that we received recently, and I'm just wondering where we sit with that and what is the best, I guess, resolution moving forward, how to deal with that at this time. Thank you.
Through your worship, this is a carryover from the previous council. It's a regret. I think my one regret as far as my employment here is not having completed that job or that task to bring it back to a two-way street. It should not be a one-way street. It has to be a two-way street. Parking is not our problem. It shouldn't be our problem, but it had become our problem. And it was a resolution and a resolve that was done by previous councils. But I think council has to realize that trying to push a 7-ton through that at any time of day is virtually impossible. And one day you're going to get a phone call, or I'll get a phone call, or whoever's sitting in my chair that'll say, we can't do Belvedere. We can't get through anymore. So my sincere hope is that council realizes that parking has to be removed in the wintertime up there. It has to be a two-way street up there. And I'm hoping that that particular direction is carried on with the person who sits in my chair.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Nope. Okay. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, Your Worship, there are several items of correspondence. Actually, just let me go there. The first is from Eric McIntyre requesting request for improving and installing sidewalks, and he's particularly looking at areas around Avenue Road, Margaret, Marion, Ethel, and Victoria Streets. Concerned that there aren't sidewalks there, and that sort of cars seem to take over in that location, and not enough space for cyclists and pedestrians. Second item is from the Honorable Stephen Lecce, Minister of Education. It's a response to the town's inquiry on the status of the Consolidated School Project, also called known as the Mega School, with reference that reference back to the Board of Education for any further information. The third item is from Tamara Wilson, Health Outreach Coordinator with the Parry Sound Friendship Center. The document is regarding a warming center to accommodate 20 clients overnight. Ms. Wilson is also here tonight to make a deputation and can provide more information on that. The fourth item is an addition to the agenda that came in yesterday from Rick Zanuzzi, Chair of DSAB, and it's a request for Council's endorsement and a resolution of support of a District of Parry Sound Ontario Health Team.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 scheduled deputations tonight, and I will allow, there was one notification last week after the everything came in, I will allow that particular one, so then that will be it. So now we come to deputations and presentations portion of tonight's council meeting. Deputations are held to a maximum of 10 minutes each, including questions of clarification from council. Presentations or deputations are also subject to the same rules of conduct as members of council, that no one shall speak disrespectfully or use offensive words or insulting expressions against any member of council, staff, or another member of the public, and please speak clearly, approximately 1 foot directly in front of the microphone. And so our first deputation tonight is Tamara Wilson, Health Outreach Coordinator, Parry Sound Friendship Center, about a warming center to accommodate 20 clients. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Tamara Wilson, Health Outreach Worker for the Parry Sound Friendship Center. Parry Sound Friendship Center and the St. James United Church Mary Street Center are partnering in order to implement a warming center in the Parry Sound area for our homeless for the months of the winter months. We have had a couple meetings, and we've had a great turnout. I have a committee together. There is a lot of support in regards to this. And at this point in time, I ask that Mayor and Council also join and give support, financial support specifically for this project.
Okay. That's everything?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor McCann.
Thank you very much for your deputation. 2 things. I was wondering maybe if we couldn't consider a motion to consider this as part of our budget for 2020 this evening. I think a lot of us probably are a little naive or sheltered in some, I suspect that, you know, how great is the need out there and how do you come to know this and identify those who are in need? Do you work in conjunction with district social services, with the Salvation Army, with other church groups? How is it that you've come to identify this demand?
My position at the Parry Sound Friendship Center focuses on addiction and homelessness. And I've done some research to find out the need in Parry Sound. Um, some of the people that at my table are Salvation Army, DSAB, specifically Melissa Hayhurst and Pamela Nelson at the Housing Corporation. And they've given me the results on the homeless in Parry Sound, and unfortunately at this time, it's a crisis that we need to address. And I believe that by opening this warming center, that we can take care of that. And I strongly believe that these people are people that have just fallen and have fallen a little bit too far and now have difficulty getting back up. And that's what we're here for. We can offer them, once we get them into our shelter and evaluate the situation, we can offer them the opportunity to help them with finding adequate housing, finding jobs, getting help with addiction, mental health, any situation that's needed at that time.
And also, you identified that this will be for men. Are you hoping eventually in the future to be able to work the logistics so that women would also be able to avail themselves of such services?
Yes, we are focusing on men at this time because we do have the Esprit Place, which takes in women and children. So our men is the men is our main focus because right now there is no men's shelter in Parry Sound. So unfortunately, these men are being forced to live on the streets or couch hop and can be finding themselves in difficult situations, which in turn leads them to problems with addiction and mental health. So I believe that it's a vicious circle that I think that the warming center would be just a start of getting them on the right track. And I am, this is just something that I'm starting, hoping to see really great results. And I'm hoping that in the future that we can look at something more permanent for men and women as well.
So then, to that, then how much, if I were to put you on the spot this evening and ask, what kind of financial support do you think you might be looking for from this municipality?
At this moment right now, we are looking for costs of, for covering the Mary Street Center where the men will be housed. We're looking at $40 a week just to cover utilities and things like that. And we're hoping we can get one paid staff member and have 2 volunteers on each night. Now the paid staff member will just be one paid staff member that will work the 3 days. We're wanting to open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights from 9 p.m. until 8 a.m. in the morning. So that will be the shifts that the one paid staff will have, and then we'll have 2 volunteers on each night as well to help that staff member. And the cost for that would be $22 an hour at 33 hours. So it'd be before deductions $726, after deductions $776.05 before deductions and $726 after. So, and then we're looking at incidentals, which will be approximately $50 per week.
So, and no doubt you have a lot of other unexpected expenses and such. So could we, could I put forth a motion that we would entertain including this in our budget deliberations for 2020, and maybe at some point, if the council is in favor of this, that you could give us some sort of a total that would help towards at least your first season of operation.
I do have a total here of $896.
Okay, thank you.
Per week?
Per week, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's a seconder, you can put that forward. Councillor Bachman seconds that. Any discussion from all in favor of that? It's carried. I have a question. Can you give us an idea of what support the district social service is giving your organization through this, as their mandate is homelessness?
Yes, I spoke with, I do have a member of the DSAB on my committee, and they have offered to pay for cots for the warming center, and also they're purchasing a steamer to help clean those cots to make sure that we don't have any issues with hygiene.
Okay. Have you asked for any more?
I have, and unfortunately at this time they do not have that in their budget.
Interesting. Okay. I'm asking those questions because their mandate is homelessness. And not all of the people that would go to that shelter are from the town of Parry Sound. And they do represent the district of Parry Sound, which would cover more of a blanket area for this district where many of those people would come from. So maybe what we should be doing as well is sending a letter to the DSAP as reminding them of their role of housing and homelessness, and asking them for further support given the area. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. Any discussion on that? All in favor? That's carried. I appreciate you sharing that, and I think Councillor Bachman has a question now. Yeah.
Yes, it was just in relation to the funding that you are looking for, and which Mayor McGarvey had tapped into, is regards to the DSAB, but it shows that in your presentation that you're also looking for funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation, Children's Aid, OPP, the Parry Sound Friendship HOC program, and the community. And I was just wondering what your feedback has been on that as a recipient of funding.
The Trillium Foundation, I have looked into, and I have proceeded to apply for, but unfortunately that process takes so long that by the time we receive any funding, the shelter will be closed. So that at this point isn't an option, but I am looking into that, using that as an option for when we open a more permanent center.
In regards to funding, you note the town of Parry Sound, but as it was noted this evening that funding for homelessness goes beyond the town of Parry Sound boundaries. And I'm just wondering if you've presented that question and level of support from the other municipalities in West Parry Sound.
No, I have not.
I encourage you to. Thank you.
I will, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. My first question was along Councillor Bachman's line is, are we the first, and what other municipalities are you going to be doing this presentation to, and when do you expect to wind that up? So I think you got the first answer, which is we're the first, but you haven't been able to do the others. The second question that I have is, I hear about the warming area for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but there's the rest of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So can you tell me what's the thought process right now of why Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and where we are, what happens Thursday to Sunday?
This has been a difficult process to get up and running, and we thought that the thought process was that if we could get it open a couple days a week and see how things go, then we could extend those hours and hopefully have it open. At this time, we have an open date for December 9th, and we are running on volunteers only. Because we just don't have the funding. The funding isn't there, and I'm going to be start knocking on doors and asking the community and other municipalities as well for funding, hoping that we can get that money in so that we can have staff on hand to have a 7-day week instead of just a 3.
Follow-up question to that is, I take it you're going to have statistics so that you can present, and are you going to be following this up with another deputation to a variety of municipalities besides perhaps district Parry Sound Social Services to advise what the information is that you've gathered?
Yes, when we open the center, we will have a intake process, we will have a registration process, so we can get an idea of numbers. And at that point, we can take those numbers and say, this is our need. And we can move forward with going to other municipalities with some numbers, and hopefully the need will be more present than it is now.
Just one more follow-up, quick one. So when you're doing that intake service, when you're doing that intake, will you also be trying to gather where a person's home base might be? I realize all about couch surfing, but still people have a home base somewhere. And will you be taking that into account? Because it seems to me that information could be useful if one finds out X number of people are actually from whatever municipality.
Absolutely. We're trying to find as much information on these poor souls as we possibly can in order to better help them.
Any further questions? Councillor McCann?
Actually, with the questions that Councillor Keith had, it sort of put in my mind the idea that this is an opportunity for you to sort of put names and faces together and give these people on the street some identity, and it's information that if you're working in partnership with DSAB or other social organizations, that I'm sure could only help. In your funding, the partners that you've talked about approaching, but I don't see social clubs mentioned here, such as, say, the Lions Club or the Knights of Columbus and that sort of thing. Often they're in a position to hand out money a little sooner. They don't always have the same budget restraints that, say, we would here at a municipal level. And have you approached some of these organizations?
Yes, I have. I've made numerous calls to all the churches in Parry Sound, all the organizations in Parry Sound. Our first meeting consisted of 17 people throughout organizations in Parry Sound, and by the second meeting, that number went down to about half. So I have approximately, including myself, Reverend Monica Moore, my executive director, Dolores McKay, there's approximately 13 people at my table right now.
So don't give up, because that's part for the course, that when you have second and third meetings, that it does dwindle down. Often people are interested in what's going on, and they may find that it's their cup of tea or not. But certainly keep knocking on these doors, and I would encourage you to do so. Reading your report, it's been well thought out. You obviously have some plans for now and in the near future, so by all means don't lose any momentum with this.
No, I have Officer Scally that is supporting me through this, and he said he was willing to take me around and knock on some doors with me, just to use his shield, lack of a better word, to help people realize that this is a situation that really needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? No? Tamara, thank you very much for your deputation and what you're doing. I really appreciate it. There really hasn't been a men's shelter, or if there has been, it's been a very long time. And we appreciate your efforts. Let's try to get some coordination going and maybe have that happen. And yes, I mean, there is a spree place for the ladies, but there hasn't been anything for the men. And unfortunately, some of them would end up spending a night in jail just to have a warm bed to lay on. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next deputation. I don't see Jim Hanna here, so you're doubling in for Jim? Okay, all right. Our changing healthcare environment. Jeez. Councillor McCann, please.
So if I may,
Yep.
Your Honor, introduce ourselves. Heidi Stevenson is the Chief Operating Officer at the West Prairie Sound Health Centre. I'm Deborah Randall Wood, the Chief Nursing Officer and Director of Patient and Family Centred Care at the Health Centre. Mr. Hanna, who regrets that he can't join you, was kept in Toronto on a family matter. And Mr. Sanderson, also our CEO, sends his regrets and best wishes. So we're very honoured and very happy to be speaking to you, and thank you for your warm welcome.
So we're here to update you a little on our changing environment in healthcare. And our very first slide that we have for you is about our electronic health record project that we just went live with on October 1st. We're very excited about this. It's probably our biggest transformation in local healthcare since we actually moved into our beautiful building back in 2005. We've been working on it for 2 years. And when I say we, normally with software, you think, oh, well, we've got a bunch of IT people working on it. No, we had physicians and nurses and physiotherapists and occupational therapists, lab technicians, pharmacy technicians, medical imaging technicians, as well as finance and procurement people. So it was very exciting. We were the first to go live. We worked on this project with Sioux Area Hospital as well as North Bay Regional Health Center. And we were the first to go live. They went live later on in October. But because we were the first, we had 50 extra people on site for the first 3 days helping us out with this. So it was very exciting. Some of the pictures in here, the one in the bottom, or sorry, in the top center was some of our training that went on before we went live. We had to train 140 nurses, and each of those nurses needed 18 hours of training. And in the far right there, you can see our workstation on wheels. These are some of the devices that we needed for an electronic health record. So it was a very exciting 2 weeks. You can see in the bottom middle picture there, that was our command center that was up and running for 24 hours a day for the first 14 days. And we're very grateful for all the support that we received from North Bay and Sioux. And one of the really exciting things about our electronic health record is that by 2022, the other 21 hospitals in what was the Northeast LHIN will be jumping on to what we've created. So they'll be starting that journey in January. They'll be starting to look at our system and transitioning to jumping on. So another big project that we have going on, which normally, if it weren't for the electronic health record, this would be all that we'd be talking about, is we're getting a brand new CT scanner. The CT scanner that we have currently in the hospital was purchased in 2005 when we moved in. There's been a bit of a price difference since we bought the new one compared to the old one. The old one was $4 million. We've now managed to get one for $1.5 million. And it's a much better piece of equipment. We used to have 64 slides. Now we'll have 128 slides, or slices per slide. So it's a much lower radiation dose as well. And any clinical questions, Deborah would be best to actually ask about that. But it's very exciting. And if for those of you who have been around the health center right now, there is a trailer parked right outside of our emergency, and that is a portable CT scan so that we can meet our patients' needs, because the old one has been taken out and we're just getting the new one in place. Both of these projects would not be possible if it weren't for the foundation and all the generous supporters in the area. We couldn't do it without them.
So in addition to those changes that are happening at West Prairie Sound Health Centre, there's lots of changes happening in the Ontario health system. So reading the paper and watching the news, you'd be aware of many of these. A big change is that there's been a new agency created called Ontario Health. And this is what will in part, we talk about it as replacing the LHINs. That's partly correct. It's a complex model, but Ontario Health will take the place of the kind of work the LHINs used to do. A number of agencies that are in your report used to report directly to the Ministry of Health, and they now report to Ontario Health instead, and that transition has been happening over the last few weeks. In addition to that, the old LHIN system, and I've got a map to show you in the next slide, the old LHIN system has been changed into a new system of 5 different regions. And so if you look at where the lines are, that's where the LHINs used to be, and then the colors are where the new regions are. So understandably, 14 going into 5, those regions are quite large. We're very fortunate that our place on the planet in the geography kept us in the north. So there's one region for the north, and we're still in it. We're just at the southern boundary of that. But there's a lot of advantages to still being in the north, and we consider ourselves, of course, a north community, so we wanted to stay placed there. So the LHIN functions are happening pretty much the way they used to. We haven't noticed any difference, but those staff are being transitioned over to Ontario Health. And it's a huge transition with many people. They're managing that quite well. The only thing that hasn't transitioned over yet is Trillium, Gift of Life. And there's complications with that around making sure that people that are involved in that organ transplant process aren't disrupted in any way for that. So that transition is going to happen a little later on. So in addition to this, the 5 regions, and that's going to be a big change, and those are just being set up. There's also going to be a reconfiguration of other systems, public health, land ambulance, ambulance communication. There's going to be public consultations around what the future for these are going to be. A number of months ago, we thought we knew what the future of those would be, and it's changed now. So this was just announced on the 18th of November. So we're hopeful to be able to participate in those discussions and advocate as strongly as we can for the services that are now within Parry Sound to stay in Parry Sound. We believe there's a great deal of efficiencies within that model, and a larger sort of province-wide EMS system doesn't make sense to rural communities and to northern communities. So there's a good work ahead for us in terms of that kind of advocacy to keep the system operating the way it is. The AMO is involved in this, in bringing forward solutions and working with the folks that are doing those consultations, and we know that you'll have a strong voice there. The biggest news really is around the formation of Ontario Health teams, which is slightly different than Ontario Health. So Ontario Health is a large provincial organization, and then there's going to be a number of different Ontario Health teams under that. We've been working very hard for quite a while now on the Ontario Health team that we believe will serve West Parry Sound best. In the summer last summer, the working group that was creating the OHT for West Parry Sound submitted an application. And I think it's very important to note that while there's going to be all these different OHTs, it's not going to mean that we don't work together at all. We're going to have an OHT, that's what our plan is. There'll also be one for Muskoka, Algonquin. Nipissing will have one. There'll be one around the Sudbury area. And all of those boundaries that will be created there are going to be ones that we're obligated to work in such a way that is going to diminish the burden on those organizations that have to cross boundaries. We'll all be referring, for example, to Sick Children's Hospital. None of us are ever going to have a site like Sick Kids within our OHT, but we'll be liaisoning with them, sending people down just like we do now. We'll be working with the people who are on the east side as well as in the north. So it's going to make those kind of relationships easier, because we're going to be obligated to make those easier than what they are now. So after we submitted our application, and this next slide shows you in that diagram, the bottom list is all the organizations that work together to create that submission for the Ontario Health team. We were very happy and proud that we were assigned the in development status, which means we have essential elements that are needed. We got some good feedback about that, and there's a couple of things that we need to do to move on to full application. But we're actively working on that process now. And that process involves, for us, just a recognition of what's happening around us as well. And I mentioned that Municipal, Algonquin, Nipissing, Sudbury, those are the ones, I think they're the green dots that are around us. And those ones are moving forward into full application, and announcements are coming out now and over the last couple of weeks, and will continue, that those are ready to form Ontario health teams of their own. We are going to be in the next phase of that. What will happen for us is that we'll be able to put forward to move to an application to move to full application. I know it sounds complicated. This is the ministry process, but they want to make sure you've got everything nicely aligned. And a big part of moving that forward is recognizing what populations we're going to be working with. There's an organization called the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences out of the University of Toronto. And they've done amazing work on referral patterns. And this whole system is built around where people go for care. So it starts with primary care, where your physician is, and then it goes to where your physician sends people, goes to where specialists practice. And then they attribute populations to that. So we're getting information on what our attributed population is. And most of the physicians in West Parry Sound refer people into West Parry Sound Health Centre. And the specialists who come to work within West Parry Sound Health Centre. When we do have patients move, they seem to move north and south. They'll go up to Sudbury, or they'll go down to Royal Vic, or from time to time they'll go into as far as Toronto to Sick Kids, or they'll go halfway down there to Waypoint. We have some patients who go to Orillia, or high-risk mums and babies go to Orillia, but most of the referral patterns are north and south. So we're trying to understand that and understand what that means for us in terms of how we service those people within those corridors. It's important, I think, to note that the in-development part allows us a chance to also watch how the other OHTs are developing, what they're using for their governance structure, how they're going to work out so that everyone around the table has a good and solid voice in the development of the OHTs. We know that there's far more than just primary care, but right now the focus is on primary care for us as physicians and nurse practitioners. And you know, we have our 6 nurse practitioner-led clinics. It's around home and community care, in addition to care for seniors and long-term care. And as we move forward, our priorities, and we have to identify these for the next stage, is going to be the care of seniors as well as people who live with mental health and addiction concerns. It doesn't mean they're the only people we're going to look after, but that's going to be a focus because that's what is largely our population is affected by. We have a lot of people that need care within those 2 categories, as well as all of the other people that we regularly look after. So we're very hopeful that our OHT will be able to move to full application. We have a robust group of people that are working very hard on this. It's not intended to be exclusive, but there's accountabilities that have to go along with the signing on to be part of that group, at least for this first part, and then we'll expand outer after that. We'll still have relationships with everybody across the region on the east side as well as north and south, but we've developed a good, robust, and an argument that was accepted by the ministry that in this community there's unique needs, that we want to be able to have governance and autonomy around this community. We don't feel there's a benefit in linking with hospitals, for example, that are in the north of us or to the east of us or the south. We feel that we can have a comprehensive program that's led and governed accountability-wise. The spending of the resources that are going to be available, we want that all to be in West Parry Sound. And so far, the ministry is very supportive of that initiative. So I'm proud to share those details with you.
Okay.
And I think that we're done, Your Honor.
Okay. Questions? Councillor McCann?
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Just backing up a little bit there, in terms of, and I found this a little confusing with, you've got your Ontario Health Team, province-wide, and then you've got your local OHT teams. And so can you explain the difference between, say, what our OHT team would be about and our catchment area versus, say, the area that we're aligned with Sudbury? So like there, you know, when you look at the boundaries that Lynn used to have and that they've been realigned now, how do we, what difference does that make to us, or what impact does that have on us in that we're under, that we're aligned with Sudbury, yet we have our own OHT? Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, and it's taken a while for us to get our heads around it as well. So so there's Ontario Health. If you think of the Ministry of Health over top of it all, and then Ontario Health, which delivers actually healthcare to the population. And then under Ontario Health, there's 5 regions that are just going to do the business of Ontario Health. And then within under that, there's going to be 40 or so Ontario Health teams, maybe a few more. And the advantage of the Ontario Health teams in the different communities is that we're going to be able to, for the first time, this is so exciting for someone who's been nursing for 35 years, for the first time we can pull all services together under one governance structure. So right now, if we want to have someone discharged from the hospital on home care, we're trying to get them to be linked up with a nurse practitioner or a primary care physician. If we want to get them admitted to one of the long-term care homes, we have to go through different organizations to do that. And we won't have to in our future. We'll be one organization. It'll be one way of working with staff in a united way. We'll be able to cut down the barriers of having to have different application processes for each of those. And we'll be one entity in the future is under one governance structure. Now that structure is still to be determined because we know that organizations have their own governance and their own boards who want to do good work for that. So if they will still exist and they'll be having members sit on the larger board, how it's going to work out is still to be decided. But instead of working separately for the same ends, we're all working to have people serviced in the very best way they can. The barriers between us are going to come down. The time wasted, the back office support around having finance, around HR services, even having things like the contracts where we buy things from. Instead of everyone negotiating that differently, we'll be able to have one organization doing that together. Like it's just brilliant how this is going to work out once we get that organized. It's getting from here to there and bring together the right people, which is why we're not that keen on getting too big, right? I understand that the OHT in Sudbury is quite a size. They might have 50 people around that table, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that. I'm sure very smart people will figure out how to have that governance structure. We're not going to be that big, and we'll be able to, for ourselves, decide what is best for Parry Sound. But does that help at all?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just think they needed to be a little bit more creative in their terminology labeling and such.
It might be helpful to use different words.
Yeah, exactly. So do you anticipate an OHT team that will have its, within the West District, that will have its own autonomy or sovereignty, so to speak?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we've applied for. That's what's been approved for in development so far, and that's what we're actively looking.
Good. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Councillor Bachman.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. One of my questions is surrounding the boundaries of municipalities, and I'm just wondering to what effect does the development of these HOTs reflect around, where we as a municipality set our boundaries, whether it be east, west, north, south?
So there'll be some people in, for example, and I'm not quite sure where the attributed populations are for the east side, but it will likely be people in Burkes Falls, for example. People will be associated with the Muskoka Algonquin Ontario Health Team, and people in like Powassan will be with the Nipissing Ontario Health Team. We'll have people likely like this side of all of that, McKellar and Magnetawan, Dunchurch, where I'm from, and up and down the corridor, because it follows referral patterns, so it's really where people go for their care. And we can validate that through our land ambulance service. If we pick up people on the east side of Parry Sound, they want very much to go to North Bay or Aurelia, or they want to go to Huntsville. They don't necessarily want to come over here, and that's been demonstrated with the group from the University of Toronto around how people move. So it's the same people who we already care for, we'll be continuing to care for.
Follow-up question. In regards to the OHT development, I've seen and heard that the numbers in relation to these OHTs run around 300,000 in population. we don't have that in West Parry Sound, so how do we perceive that as, fulfilling a requirement to develop an OHT for the West Parry Sound?
So the minister has said that the number around the minimum number requirement was flexible based on community needs, that there was going to be some variability added to that. Because when we first heard about it, we thought, oh my goodness, we're out of the picture. There's no way we have that number of people. And then we were listening to what she was saying, and that there was room for unique communities. And we know what our summer population is like and how many people are in Killbear Park alone. If Jim Hanna was here, he could give you the exact number. I think there's 100,000 of them there. At least that's what it feels like in our emerge on a holiday weekend. So when you can count those people as well, and the folks that come into our community for care, and the uniqueness and and it's not all based on geography, but part of it is and how long it takes to get someplace else. We were able to demonstrate that we're unique enough, situated in a unique enough place, that our relatively small population is deserving of its own OHT. And we were waiting when we put in our application in case they wrote back. We were sort of having our fingers crossed that they weren't going to say, oh, you're too small, connect with someone else. But they didn't. They said, go ahead, you're in development. So we've made a convincing argument that we're worth our own OHT.
Killbear Park actually has over 300,000 visitors each year.
Jim Hanna would have known that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with the how many people come to the municipality of Carling and to Killbear. And yes, I guess my question is, if all else fails, where does that leave us and what do we support? Like,
So
we are in full, we're not in full development, but it's shown in the application process that we're in development.
Yes.
And I guess my question is to you, where do we support? We have other information presented before us this evening in regards to correspondence in aligning with other demographics, so I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, so as far as we're able to determine, thus far with the work that we've done, we're going to be successful with our OHT within this region. If we're not successful, if we have to be aligned with another OHT, then I expect we'll get guidance from the ministry around where that alignment would be. And it will, all the information we have is that it follows referral patterns, and our referral patterns are north and south, are not to the east.
There are full applications that have been accepted that we know are under the 300,000 mark as well. Muskoka Algonquin would be under the 300,000. Likely North Bay would be under 300,000 as well. Sioux Area Hospital has been accepted, they're under 300,000.
Thank you very much. That's good information.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? I really appreciate you being here and the conversation and the update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. We appreciate it.
And we will tell Jim that you did an absolutely excellent
thank
job.
you.
It will be web streamed, so he missed out on it, and that it went really well. So
Well,
thank
He
you.
would have enjoyed being here, but I'm happy that we got a chance to.
There you go. Okay, the next deputation is Park Trail. Yes. Welcome, gentlemen. Yep, click the purple, I think it's a purple button there. Yep, you're on.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Nick Ryland. I'm the president of Park Trail Association, and with me is Peter Searle, who's our executive director and general manager. So, what we came to do tonight was to give you an update of where we stand and what's happened to us in the last year, and to basically explain things, answer any questions, and hopefully to seek some money too. And I'm sure you've noticed that in the presentation. So, okay. In terms of an overview, I'm not planning to read the information. I'm sure you're quite capable of reading. Basically, we've been around for a while. We operate trails that come from just outside of Killbear to just outside of Algonquin Park, hence the name. It's about 230 kilometers, I think I said that. Basically, it's a trail that brings in a lot of tourism, a lot of people coming for an adventure, and we're obviously close enough to Toronto to bring in people, perhaps more than anywhere else in the province. It's a very highly rated trail. It's an old rail trail for those of you who don't know. And it runs, the essential part of the trail really comes from the Highway 400 down at exit 213, yes. 214? Anyway, 214 anyway, and runs east over to Huntsville. That's certainly the most populated area of the trail, and it gets a lot of usage both from, in the summer, from ATVs, from dirt bikes, from bicyclists, from hikers, and a number of other people that come out to use the trail. Most of our money comes from selling trail passes, which we do to essentially ATVers and dirt bikers. Bicyclists and others amount to a very small amount for revenue purposes. But okay, what we're seeking is an investment from Parry Sound of $6,000. I would imagine you've noticed that in there. That is more than we've asked for in previous years. I'll get to why shortly in the presentation. And obviously it's been a tough year, a successful year, but a tough year nonetheless for us. So. Okay. I know you've probably seen this presentation or something similar to that, or have heard of one in the past. We contribute a number of ways culturally, environmentally, economically, and socially. All of those are quite visible when you talk to people out on the trails. Part of my involvement with Park to Park has been out on the trails, and frankly, it's usually a very enjoyable experience for me to meet with people that are out there riding, or in some cases, well, riding a bicycle too, and just chatting with people out there and to see how much enjoyment it brings them. So, okay. Materially, in terms of facts and figures, I mean, this slide is basically it. You can see that our trail pass sales, which contributes about 2/3 of our revenue for the organization, jumped up to almost $80,000 this year. I apologize, it's a little small and it was difficult to kind of get the history in there. But even over a few years ago, in 2016, we were at 42,000, so we've almost doubled that in the last 3 years. A lot of that comes from simply making ourselves more visible. We have very good presence on Facebook, and we attract a lot of people, I think because of, you know, the proximity to Toronto and the availability of the trail, which is quite a nice scenic trail to ride. So, in terms of our trail passes, the number of trail passes that we've sold, you can see up there that again we bumped up to roughly 1,143 passes. That's not roughly, I guess, but from 952 last year. One of the issues that affected us in 2018, so the year before, was the so-called Parry Sound 33 fire, which, as all of you know, didn't really affect Parry Sound or Park to Park. But a lot of people in Toronto thought that the whole place was on fire and stopped coming, and I know that some businesses, including my brother sitting over there, you know, had a major hit simply because people thought the whole place was on fire. That we had our sales going along, and I'm pretty confident that we would have reached 80,000 last year, other than it just fell off a cliff once Parry Sound 33 became widely known. So truthfully, what we got this year is not really a surprise, and it hopefully represents a very good trend. We plan for it to continue next year, and again, we were up 19% year over year, which is a very good sign that it's favorably looked at by people who come to use it. So, some comparables we have. We do some work. We have an alliance with the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance, which is basically in Eastern Ontario, as you can imagine. And their sales last year were about $500,000, which is obviously considerably more than ours. They are a much larger geographic area, run through a number of municipalities, but we work with them on a regular basis. And Hatfield Mccoy, which is a trail system down in West Virginia, which basically turned a small town that was in a coal mining area into a very viable destination for ATVers, including me. I've been there and ridden on the trail simply because I'd heard so many things about it. I wanted to go and see it. They have a very developed model where they managed to turn around a town called Logan and build it into a destination for basically people across, well, I was going to say America, but across North America on a larger scale, simply by offering trails which people want to ride. So the other thing we had this year, we have an annual rally in June around Father's Day. We managed to raise $10,000 from that in the last year, and we had a donation from, I can say it, right?
Oh, yeah.
From the Henvey Inlet Wind, or Pattern Energy. They gave us a donation as a part of a public service and gave us a donation of $10,000, which helps a great deal as well. So, okay. In terms of the economic impact, I know there is, I do not remember what TREAM stands for, TREIM, but I know it's a tourism and recreation model that tries to estimate the value of bringing people into the area is, and you can see that we had a value in there of $731,000, you know, offering full-time employment, retail trade, accommodation, food and beverage, and indirect taxes. Clearly, when people come to Parry Sound to use our trails, both summer and winter, it contributes economically to the area. In particular, at a minimum, people are coming and buying gas and food and buying goods and services, and obviously hotels in a lot of cases as well, and that contributes a great deal to the area. In terms of social impacts, this is what we had mentioned earlier in here. Frankly, in my observation of meeting people out on the trail is that it's inevitable that if you go out to ride a trail, number one, it's generally not safe to go by yourself in case something happens. And number two, people inevitably go with friends. And when they seek to ride, then they'll phone up a friend or two or three or four and go out for a ride. In a lot of cases, I met families out on the trails this year with, you know, 3 or 4 people from the same family coming up from Toronto area just to ride the trails and go out and see them. It is a very social event that gets them out and exposed to everything. So we have, I said earlier, we have a growing Facebook presence, and we typically attract 5,000 or 6,000 people with our Facebook posts that are visible out there. That works very well for us in a number of ways. And when we have breaking news, you can see up there that we've said we've had as many as 10,000 people view those pages. So we have a good presence. We're hoping to continue to build that and to grow that so that we can grow the trail. Didn't go. Yeah, it's on here.
It's up there, didn't change there.
It is, okay, well, yeah, it's just not there. Okay, so this one is the current slide I'm talking to.
Okay, go.
There we go. So the year of the bridges. Peter and myself and a number of other volunteers managed to work on a lot of bridges this year. We have 14 bridges from east to west or across our trails, and like anything where you have a bridge, if any one of our bridges goes down, it has a pronounced impact on the ridership on the trail period, because in general, most of them cross rivers, some big, some small, and it's very difficult to go around them. ATVers in the summer can typically take a bypass. We usually put up detour signs and show them how to go around, but snowmobilers, it's another problem entirely for them. As I've said up here, we had a number of bridges that required a lot of work. 4 of them we redecked, meaning that we took off all of the wood that was on the bridge and managed to replace it with new material and make them safe and sound, and that's quite a bit of work. We still have one bridge which is out just inside the McMurch-Monteith area, which is 100+ feet, and it's been closed since May because simply it's unsafe. It's been there for more than 100 years. It was an original train bridge that was originally meant to carry 50 tons?
No, 100.
100 tons? Okay, I was right the first time. In any event, it's old and it's rotted and it needs to be replaced in its entirety, which is why it still remains closed. We're working with the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs to fund some temporary repairs and then ultimately next summer to replace the bridge in its entirety. That's a very costly expense. In general, in the last dozen years or thereabouts, the OFSC has managed to provide funding for capital expenses like this, because it would be conservatively a couple of $100,000 to replace, and that's well beyond our means and or our budget. But they are able to source funds from the province and from other organizations to do this. But like anything else, it's like a chain. If you break a chain in the middle, then the rest of it's pretty much affected. Bridges are the problem for us. Like I said, we've done 4 this year. We know that we have to do 4 more next year. That excludes the 100-footer that we're talking about as well. So we've spent a great deal of time and a great deal of money for us, anyhow, on those bridges, simply to make them passable. We do hope to have all of them open, including the last one, before this snowmobile year kicks off. But that's a work in progress for the last one. We did have to defer a number of things. Basically, all of our efforts went into fixing the bridges, and therefore we did not spend a lot of time on maintaining the trails, grooming not snowmobile grooming, but grooming the bed of the trail, and brushing them and doing a number of things to make them more usable. Simply put, all of our efforts were volunteer efforts, and a lot of our time was there, and we had our backs against the wall. Okay, and this was just, you got things you want to say? No?
You've covered most of it.
Okay. That's it really to hear from us. I mean, and welcome to take questions. Yeah, Doug?
Thank you,
Sorry.
Councillor McCann.
Sorry, I can't do that.
Thanks very much for your presentation. A couple things I wanted to mention. I think there may be a myth to the regards to who pays for these bridges, getting them fixed, that it's not the MNR. I think maybe
we receive no funding whatsoever from the provincial or federal government. Nothing. Right? We do get municipal contributions, but.
So this one bridge that's 100 years old, who would have originally built it, and does anyone retain ownership of it?
Well, I mean, we manage the trail under a land use permit from the MNR, the MNRF nowadays, but we receive no funding from them to do it. So the funding basically comes from, for major capital expenses like that comes generally from the OFSC. And the other bridges that we did repair, the 4 we've already done, were paid for from our own revenues, basically past sales.
If you went all the way up the food chain, it would belong to the Ontario government.
Yeah.
But with the LUP, technically, it is in Park to Park's control and ownership of. Yeah. If we walked away from it, then it would fall back on
but the $20,000 that I mentioned there was paid for by Park to Park. Okay.
Okay, good. So you should speak to the number of man hours that you have, for person hours that you have for volunteers, and has the one pass system kicked in? And my last question would be, how are things working out for your members who are able to drive anywhere on our streets in Parry Sound?
Okay. So the first question was, yes, sorry, I didn't cover that. It is on the slide. We frankly estimated the number of person hours that were spent on the trail at 1,000. Simply put, just by multiplying the number of days we were out there, and roughly by 8 hours for volunteers. And again, virtually all of that work. Well, Peter is an employee, so I mean, he's not technically a volunteer. Peter was there virtually every day. I was there most days, and a number of other volunteers were there. We seemed to be moderately successful towards the end of the year. In November, we were lucky enough to get volunteers on a regular basis, almost daily, from simply posting on Facebook that we needed volunteers to help, because that's how we managed to do it. But
and new volunteers.
Pardon me? And yes, and I volunteered, yes. But I mean, and so did some other board members, and so did some other people that just came out because we posted it. Several times people showed up that we didn't know and came and helped and worked very hard to do it. It's a lot of grunt labor, frankly, to do it. So, and it's, you know, we do thank them. I don't mean that there's no thanks, but other than that, it's just, you know, disappears into the woodwork, literally. So
I think it's important when you're asking for money from a municipality that you do have the support of the people, and so that carries a lot of weight. And so I know during my time on the board, there was talk of the one pass system. Is that something that's been incorporated, and has that helped your sales?
Yeah, it's still in the works. I mean, one pass was an attempt for the rest of council members to have an agreement between various organizations so that you could buy one pass in the province of Ontario and ride other trails. It proves to be difficult because in a lot of cases organizations are very defensive of their own trails that they maintain and don't really want to share. And the risk is, of course, that if we did this, that, you know, it would diminish the amount of money that different organizations like ours collect, because, you know, I bought a pass in Windsor for the sake of argument and then came up here and rode, and that would do nothing for Park to Park because we would be out the money. Nevertheless, we continue to pursue opportunities to get to a common pass that would be good throughout the province. I mean, there's a lot of details to get into for that, but that isn't on the immediate horizon anyhow. Sorry. And you had a third question too.
Yeah, well, I just mentioned the fact that your members can drive anywhere on the streets in Parry Sound. I imagine that's had a positive impact.
I think that's very good. I mean, I know it's different than other local municipalities, and I don't see a lot of ATVers on the roads in town, but I do see them from time to time, and certainly I notice. And it's a big deal for them to be able to come into town to buy gas, to buy food, to go to their hotel, to do all those things, and I think that's all a very positive thing. I think that was a very forward step for Parry Sound. I think it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, something like that. And I know other municipalities don't do that, so I think it's a very big deal to do it, and it helps build the, you know, the acceptance of the sport too. When people see that if you're an ATVer, you don't have 3 heads and you don't come in and eat babies and things like that. So
It also shows that Parry Sound is open for business as far as I'm concerned. Well, yeah, I don't see a lot of ATVers in town.
Yeah.
But the fact they can is a benefit, especially following some of the different social media sites that I do, and I do see those comments put up there about Parry Sound.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the work you do. It's nice to see you gentlemen again.
Thank you.
Councillor Bachman.
Thank you for your presentation, and as a newcomer to the board, obviously I started paying attention about the travels by ATVs and side-by-sides in our community, and I've taken the opportunity to speak to people who are coming from Seguin and other municipalities into the town of Parry Sound, whether it be for gas or to Walmart or whatever, and I think they truly like the opportunity that they have as a recreation component into their lifestyle. So I think that's definitely a plus for us to offer that to our ratepayers and surrounding communities. With regards to the this year's let's just say ask, in the past it's always been $4,000. This year you're coming asking for $6,000, which is relatively I'd say a low ask in my learning of what these bridges cost, and you know, understanding the responsibility that it has become to our 4-season destination that we like to promote ourselves as. And I was just wondering, in relation to our contribution, how would you put that in perspective to other municipal asks that you were requesting throughout West Parry Sound?
Well, frankly, I mean, I debated with myself about what our ask was. I mean, because I don't want to seem greedy. By the same token, it's fair to say that I don't have any problem with saying it. I don't think it's public knowledge anyhow. Seguin gives us annually gives us $16,500, and they pay us a fee to monitor the conditions on the Rose Point Trail of another $7,000. So I mean, in total, they're giving us $23,000. So I mean, that's a lot more than Parry Sound, and a lot more than most other municipalities, some of whom give us nothing. But I mean, my point in bringing up the bridge slide was to point out that we have had a lot of expenses in this year, and we expect to have a lot of expenses next year as well for simple maintenance. I mean, and again, that's really all volunteer labor, and we're getting materials not for free by any means, but as cheaply as we can. So frankly, we're getting desperate for both money and volunteers to be able to maintain the trail in a way that we need to. Because again, if a bridge goes down, it basically stops you dead on the trail, and like I said, some people can drive around it, and we go back out onto the highway, generally onto Highway 518 just south of town, and then come back onto the trail at a further point. But obviously it's a big problem, and when you close down a bridge, it has a major impact on people coming. So like I said, we were fortunate to complete 4 of them. We completed the last one just on November the 26th, if I'm right. So, and there's a great deal of work, and we are finding it more difficult to get volunteers. On the same token, we do manage to get some volunteers to come and help, but on a typical day out there doing bridges would be 4 to 6 people, sometimes 1 or 2 more. And it's a great deal of work and over many days. So, I mean, having said that, yeah, our ask isn't a lot. I'm conscious of not trying to be silly about it. By the same token, Seguin, and I know that the majority of the trail is in Seguin Township, I'm aware of that, but I mean, benefit-wise, I think Parry Sound probably drives more economic benefit than Seguin does, so.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, just 2 quick questions, sir, and thank you for your presentation. I certainly can see the benefits of park-to-park trails, but I'm wondering, for example, when you speak about the bridges, if there's another way of looking at this, if this really isn't a marketing opportunity for you, because here's trails, and you have the opportunity of, within those trails, you can cover X number of bridges. I just see that as a marketing thing rather than any sort of a negative, like it can be turned around. That's the one thing, but I believe you mentioned, unless I misunderstood, where you're talking about Logan, West Virginia. And I know different people who are serious ATVers, live further north, and the bottom line is they seem to check out that area every year. But one of the comments that I heard, and it just seems to me, maybe it's somewhere in the middle, is basically when they go, they're spending their money on gas, food, probably some beer, whatever, if one wants that. But that's the big expenses. They're not coming in to buy other things because they're wanting to boogie on the ATV. It's not really designed to be backpack for all sorts of other purchases. And that's what they do during the day. They go and they stay at a place, so they hunker down, they're on their ATV till it gets dark and they're back again. So I'm just kind of wondering, do you do any sort of studies when to say really how much people spend in the community, when I hear that basically, like I said, in other places, it's basically the 3 areas that I've mentioned?
Yeah, those I think are by far the most common. I have no doubt of that whatsoever, but I do think that a lot of people will come and buy goods and the services that I was mentioning. At the very least, go to places like Canadian Tire or other sporting goods places to buy whatever you need, a raincoat, some boots, a new helmet, whatever it is that you need. So it isn't just those other things. Do I know quantitatively how much? No, I don't, but it would not be uncommon. And speaking even just for myself, I go away on ATV trips myself, and it's always, what do I have and what do I need? And if I don't have it, then I'll go buy it. And, you know, I don't want to wait till I get there perhaps, but I mean, I'll go and do it. And I think that contributes a lot to the economy, so.
Okay. Mr. Harris has a question.
I'm just wondering, has there been consideration given to sponsorships? When you think of Royal Distributing, which has a lot of outdoor gear, both snowmobiling and ATVing, sponsor a bridge repair or sponsor things along the trail, naming rights, that kind of a thing, whether it's home lumber if you're looking for materials, or people that use that trail might be looking and seeing advertising in stores that might participate in?
Yeah, actually, we do have a corporate sponsor, which is CF Moto, a manufacturer of ATVs. They, I don't know what word to use, lend us. They let us use 5 different side-by-sides this year that they give for our use for a year, and then they take them back at the end. That is a corporate sponsor for us. It doesn't drive income for us other than it gives us the means simply to go out and work on the trails, gives us the vehicle to go out and do it. We would like to expand other things and get sponsors, and individually, the last bridge that we worked on, which is at Seguin Falls, actually, when it was last done in 2007, was sponsored by a number of organizations. There's a sign there that says it. We were not able to do that this year. In a lot of cases, it boils down to simply not having enough hands and feet to be able to manage that aspect, but it is something that we need to do better, and we're applying for grants. Some of those other organizations do a very good job. They have people that are dedicated to applying for federal and provincial grants for doing things. We haven't been very successful at doing that. It's something that we'd like to do. So I don't know if that really answers your question in part, I hope, anyhow. So
just perhaps a follow-up question. Yeah, naming rights was part of that. But I'm wondering if you tap into the local municipalities, whether there could be assistance in doing grant applications if that was something that was considered.
Yes, we have done deputations to other councils. We have one next week with Seguin. We have another one shortly after that in McMurch Monteith. In those cases, the trail runs through those municipalities, so it's not that big of a stretch. But I mean, yes, we would also plan to do them in Carling and some other locations as well. I'm not aware of grants from local councils other than we simply go and beg like we're doing here today. But if there is a grant process, then we'd certainly be happy to do so anyhow.
Okay. We're good? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last deputation will be Fritz Dissler, who had asked for a moment to speak. The button on the front.
Got it.
You're on.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tyson Schur. With Fritz, we're from the Bayside Family Church, which was previously the Pentecostal Tabernacle. We've got, I think Fritz, you gave out a letter that we had brought to town. It was earlier this year. Yep, so I can read that to you guys now. So as representatives for the Bayside Family Church, we would like to inform the Mayor and Council of concerns relating to the municipality services of the property of 4 Parry Sound Drive. For the past 9 to 10 years, we've been dealing with intermittent issues relating to the sewer line of our sewer pumps. We now believe these issues are related to items outside of our control that are provided by the town. In the past 10 years, we've had 3 sewer pumps need replacing, refurbishment, and have dealt with flooding and excess sewage tank pump outs, including 5 pump outs this last winter at the property. Our property is located at the end of the sewer line north, the north end of Parry Sound. Last winter, town crews and contractors hired by the town had to dig up the sewer line in front of Bayview and Homestead Plumbing a number of times. Through these excavations, our understanding is that the sewer line is only 2 feet down in some places and is not insulated. The water lines in these same areas are approximately 5 feet down and are insulated. These areas of the sewer line are continually freezing, which in turn reverses the pressure from the line to our system, with even more of our neighbors' sewage pressuring back to our location. This continual pressure is then burning out our pumps much faster than expected. And when that happens, the basement of our church building floods. This past winter, we had 2 significant flooding instances, which in turn caused the cancellation of one of our Sunday morning services in March and other community events. These issues seem to begin around the time Parry Sound Drive was rerouted. It is also our understanding that the town provides and maintains the pumps of our neighbors in this area, which is not an option that is apparently available to us. We believe the town staff know there is an issue in regards to the system in this area, which is why they have agreed to cover the maintenance and costs of the pumps for these other businesses. We're requesting that the council consider sharing in the burden of the costs associated with the sewer line. Since 2009, our records indicate a cost of approximately $10,500 that we have spent, which we can directly attribute to incorrectly installed sewer lines and subsequent issues. We have provided a copy of the invoices for these costs incurred for your review.
I'd like to say something to it. Bay Area got a new grinder pump installed 2 or 3 years ago from the town. Probably occurred the same because this burned out. The thrift store und die GMT step, the grinder pump is looked after from the town. And I think the town spent over 200,000 to fix this incident what the engineer 10 years ago missed to insulate a pipe. So we like to see our cost reimbursed to us, what we had the last 10 years. Yeah, put it $10,500.
That's your
We
ask?
spend on money for pump outs, for electrician, for pumps, replacing pumps. Like I like St. Peter Brown, he loaned us a grinder pump this spring when our pumps they were both out of service. We would have totally stuck. So.
Okay. Are there any questions from council? No? Okay, I guess the question is do we have copies of the invoices that,
I gave to Rebecca.
so you got them? Okay, all right.
If you have any question, you.
I think what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to take a look at this. Now, there has been some repairs done to the road.
To the road, no.
And I have no idea what that, I can't remember what that cost, but there's been significant repairs done to that. And I think we're going to have a report brought back to council on, you've made some statements with regard to other places being reimbursed or their costs covered. I'm not aware of this. I don't think council's aware of any of this, so we have to figure that out.
No, they got, Bay Area got, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know exactly, got a new pump system installed. What was broken, a complete new pump system is probably $6,000. What is this? And the thrift store and GMT, their pump is looked after from the town as well.
Okay. Typically, it's a question and answer situation with deputations, but I know Mr. Brown wants to give an answer on some of this, so I'm going to allow Mr. Brown to answer, I guess, some of the questions that he's aware of, possibly with regard to what's in the letter. So, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, the letter has been responded to. And everybody around this table has a copy of the letter that was responded by my office. With regards to Bay Area Electric and Bayview Motors, it is entrenched in their agreement that was part of the agreement with their buildings that the town maintain the system. It's pure and simple as that. Pentecostal Church, it is very clear that the town does not maintain their system. It's in their agreement, and they're very aware of that. So that is the difference. It's not because let me finish, please. It's not because we're doing it out of good faith or that we're kindness for Bay Area or Bayview. We're doing it because it's entrenched in their agreement. Pentecostal Church is not in the agreement. That's why we don't look after it. With regards to the pump outs and the fact that we've lent you pumps, we have done that out of good faith. We have done that as a favor to you. We've done it twice. We've received our pump back once, it was broken. We never charged you for that because we wanted to make sure that we were trying to help you. With regards to the force main that was just recently installed, that was done over and above what was regularly scheduled for the capital. It is now over at least 6 feet deep. In some sections, it's 5 feet with insulation. We've also included a check valve for the Pentecostal Church, which is above and beyond what the contract states. That we've done this as an extra security measure for the Pentecostal church. I approved that to make sure that it was done properly. So I'm quite concerned that we're still talking about this when it was very clear that we've done this kind of work for the church, for the rest of the individuals on that road. So I'm confident that that work is done and it's done right. I can't answer for why it was done wrong before, but those comments about the town looking after other people's pumps, we did that factually, not because we did it because we felt like it. So I wanted to make that perfectly clear to council.
Councillor Keith?
I would agree with your worship. I think there should be a report done, and I'm hoping that a report could be brought back at the next council meeting. So this is real clear in writing. I would feel more comfortable than hearing the comments verbally, please.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor McCann?
Has the problem been rectified? Like, this isn't, the flooding and the backing up, this is no longer an issue at this point? This is all in the past, do I understand?
So we don't see this until over winter time, and it's usually the time in early spring when frost seems to get driven down into the ground that we were having these issues. And it kind of goes back to the time that rerouting of Parry Sound Drive was done, that we clearly started to see these issues with our pumps and with the line freezing into the church. So it'll be, that has been redone on Parry Sound Drive. So it'll be very interesting to see what this winter brings for our sewer system coming into the church or going out of the church.
So the sewer line...
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I understood that I moved and that your worship asked for a second.
I did ask for a seconder.
And what we were supposed to do.
My apology, I'm sorry.
Are you seconding it? Councillor Burden seconds it. Okay, Councillor McCann, now you can continue.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I'm asking, the sewer pipe, is it still shallow or is it now buried deep enough that it won't freeze?
I think Mr. Brown just answered that question.
It was installed and designed and installed by the engineer and our contractor for it not to freeze. It's 6 feet deep minimum in most locations, and where they couldn't because of rock, we've super insulated it, as well as installed what's called Uricon pipe, which is a pipe which is also has a blanket of insulation around it.
Okay, so no, that's good, that's fine, I did hear you say that. So I guess my question is, if it was the fault of the town at some point, like when it was shallow and if it froze, was it on the town property or the church property? And if it froze on the town property, do we not take responsibility for that? I don't know, I'm asking.
Mr. Brown.
I mean, we assume responsibility for the repairs. If something is damaged on a road, it's like a water main break. Are you saying that we're to assume responsibility for damage to a water main break? It's the same thing.
Well,
that's what insurance is. Sorry.
So I'm just asking.
I don't want to get into a back and forth because that's not what these are for, and that's why I really wanted the report, because we would deal with it in a report. Mr. Dissler.
Can I make one more comment?
Yep.
2018, this was the first time that what we realized that the water line or the sewage line was frozen in, was digged up. The town knew this already last year, 2018 in February, that the water line freezes in. Mr. Brown didn't do anything for the 1 year. This year, there was 6 times frozen, or 5 times frozen in. 5 times they digged it up. And then, what I came there, and Peter Brown came the same time, we found the pipes this deep under the ground, under the surface, on the pavement, on the base, on Joseph Street, going out to our church. And this why this frozen. I can look, when you look back on these letters, or the bills what we have from Bay Area and from Weeks Construction, always the pump outs occurred in January, February, when we had the sewage problems. We didn't know this until last year, or actually this year, when we found out that the pipe wasn't covered, because we thought this was our fault. But now we know the pipe wasn't covered deep enough. Mr. Brown told me, yeah, the engineer signed up. He signed for something up, but it was not right. It cost now the town over $200,000 to fix it. What was done 10 years ago. I don't blame anybody for this. This was happened 10 years ago. But don't go back to us. We're looking after our pump. We have to look after our pumps. But if this occurs from the town should look after. That's what we feel.
Okay. So, Councilor McCann, please. Okay, we've got an opinion on either side, and what I want is their report, and council can then take a look at the whole report and deal with it, and I think that's the best way of dealing with it, and we can go from there. And whether there's a recommendation that comes forward with that, or council can make a recommendation based on what's been provided, then we'll deal with that. So all in favor of having the report done? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's the last deputation for tonight. We've got reports. Start with Councilor Burden tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very brief report. The only meeting I've had since the last council meeting was the District Social Services Board meeting. During that meeting, there was much discussion regarding the boundaries that the ladies from the hospital referred to today. It appears the DSAB and the hospital have two different views as to how those boundaries should be aligned, so we'll see how that plays out. Other discussion, the 2020 budget was discussed, and at this point it looks like we may be looking at a 0% increase in the budget for the DSAB for the upcoming year, which would be wonderful news. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. Since our last meeting, I've attended 4 board, committee, and public meetings at Belvedere Heights. On November 27th, a public meeting was held where Robert Berg, a consultant retained by the board, presented his findings with respect to the core business models at Belvedere. He suggested that there's currently space within the existing footprint of the building to add 20 to 24 additional beds. This would create some additional jobs, make Belvedere more efficient with respect to staffing, and generate more revenues from the province. And clearly, he identified that clearly within our catchment area there's a significant need for such housing. He found that we are currently struggling to keep up with requirements regarding documentation, which is how these facilities are paid. He suggested that in the part this is due to the technology that we're using. At the end of the day, we're missing out on $300,000 plus in potential revenues annually. This situation will continue to worsen unless the issue is addressed. In addition, the board has embarked upon a multifaceted approach to replacing our CEO. I want to be clear that this has nothing to do with the recent compliance issues that have arisen. Ms. Rivers had advised the board in September of her decision to leave Belvedere. Moving forward, the board of directors has, as I said, taken a multifaceted approach to this. We've advertised for qualified individuals who may wish to step into the role. We've sourced out a number of management firms who might provide services to Belvedere, and we've are in the process of seeking out recruitment firms to assist in providing qualified administrators. This will enable the board to source out and compare all available options. On November 26th, the Airport Commission met. We're looking at a budget there also that would see no increase in the municipal contributions. Later that evening, along with other members of council, I attended the public open house regarding our strat planning efforts at the Bobby Orr Community Center.
I guess pretty much everybody at the table last weekend attended the holiday train or Santa Claus parade, or both. Both were well attended. I want to thank all those who participated and contributed to these events. I thought they were both really well done, and I hope folks will please give generously later in the week as the Moose Salvation Army Radioathon takes place for the local Christmas toy drive, Thursday and Friday, Your Worship.
This Thursday and Friday?
Correct. And that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors, and staff, and the public. As Councillor Borneman mentioned, Belvedere has kept us rather busy. I too attended the municipal stakeholder meeting at the Fireside Lounge at Belvedere Heights on November 21st, and Robert Berg did a great job of explaining their findings and kind of presenting things to those locally who had an interest in Belvedere in terms of where we are and where we need to go. Friday evening, November 22nd, I attended the West Parry Sound District Museum Open House. The annual pass holders, stakeholders and supporters of the museum on Tower Hill were given a pre-Christmas treat with a sneak peek of the museum's new Ottawa, Arn Prior and Parry Sound Railroad working model train exhibit. Now, this replica is housed in the museum's E. Roy Smith Gallery. The model display is complete with authentic miniature structures depicting Depot Harbor, the entire railway layout, including roundhouse, stores, and landmarks of the day. Graham McDonald is its creator. He calls this his Millennium Project, and it took him some 17 years to complete. He and his wife live in Kitchener, and this is where the replica was built, in their basement. Big part of the job was taking it apart for transport up to Parry Sound and then reinstalling it up here. You've got to see this when it is open to the public later in the spring. It'll be something to see it completed. It's really authentic to scale, and if you've got memories of Depot Harbor as a kid growing up, or you're interested in history, you couldn't ask for a better field trip and a better display to see what it was all about. Also, part of the evening was devoted to the unveiling of some special and unique display cases that were funded by Ontario Trillium, and MPP Norm Miller was on hand to make a speech, and the Ontario Trillium's, just check my notes, Representative Sylvia Thompson-Nicholson was also on hand to speak about the grant, which was $13,000. As well, I attended the open house November 22nd for the Parry Sound Strategic Public Planning, and then on Thursday evening, November 28th, I attended the West Parry Sound District Museum's monthly board meeting. Various housekeeping matters, including the managers' and treasurers' reports, were accepted. Policies were discussed. We welcome new board members, Marie DeGros and Joe Bossert. And then again, it's back to Belvedere this afternoon for a special meeting with regards to human resources and such. And one final note, I want to just remind folks about the Adopt a Senior program and be a Santa to a Senior program. There's still time to get your donations. And I was speaking with Linda Taylor today, and she tells me that they've been very appreciative of a number of cash donations and gift cards that are getting, and that allows the community support services people to buy exactly what seniors need. A lot of seniors are lonely at this time of the year, and community support services and their outreach program is something that they can avail themselves to, and it really makes a difference for them. So you can make a donation, you can send in a gift, a cash donation, whichever you'd like to do, and you can drop that off at the North Star office on Bow Street or at the Community Support Services office, which of course is in Belvedere Heights on Belvedere Hill. So we do thank you, and from Community Support Services, Merry Christmas, and thank you very much. That's my report.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Mayor, and to everyone. I've been busy with my deputy mayor duties in the last couple weeks, and as part of that, I attended the West Parry Sound Health Center meeting during since our last meeting, which was presented to us this evening. And as Councillor Burden had mentioned, that we do have some things before us in regards to the direction of our Ontario Health teams that I think we're going to need to thoroughly look at and get behind and support a direction in the near future, sooner than later. As well, I also attended the Near North School Board meeting earlier this week. It was a special advisors were mandated to provide the Minister of Education with advice and recommendations about how the Near North District School Board can improve its governance, human resource practices, and financial accountability role to support and improve public confidence in the board and in Ontario's publicly funded education system. And as a participant at the meeting, there were only probably I can count the number of people with both hands, and that just shows that communication is key, that it is important, and I believe I voiced that expressed that communication is key in moving forward. However, it was unfortunate to see that in even our recent acknowledgement from the Minister of Education that we were recently referred back to the board for answers, and I just think that it's important that we look forward to this board and getting some answers that we weren't that we've been recently directed to receive from the board, and I think that's important for this council to move forward with in the near future. I also participated on behalf of Mayor McGarvey in my first participation riding the CP rail train from MacTier to Parry Sound, and I have to say I never imagined I would ever travel across that trestle the way I did. Wow, the views are exceptional, and it truly was, almost inspirational to see so many people that were lining the streets. As soon as you came out of the woods, you would say, across that trestle, there was people from all parts of neighborhoods in Parry Sound that were waiting for that train, and to be able to come out in front of so many people that came out in support of obviously this festive event. But I think what's most important about it is the caring and sharing that our community shows with their participation in helping our families in need, and what we've seen, from our harvest share and what CP Rail has put forth in donating such a generous amount on top of what our community comes out. I mean, I would like to give, big kudos to everybody in the community and everybody involved who is giving at this time of year. There's no doubt that we've heard before us that there are people in need, and it's just, I just encourage everybody to continue to give at this time of year. And the last participation as a councillor this last 2 weeks was at the strategic planning session, and I'd just like to say thank you to those who came out. Thank you to those who participated online. I think it's important to note that we did have a high volume of people participate online, and it really just shows that people are paying attention. People want to see change, and people understand that there is a voice. So I'd just like to again thank you to all the participation. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On November 25th, I attended the Parry Sound District Planning Board meeting, and consent applications were passed in Whitestone, Parry Sound, 1 each, and 3 consent applications in Carling. I'd like to give a shout out to Dan and Jessica from 18 James Street, who sponsored a wonderful event last night at the Stocky Center. So the one table supper sold out 180 people. So there was a dinner sitting at 5:30 and again at 7 o'clock, and the proceeds went to Harvest Share and Community Living Parry Sound. So thanks for the partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and a wonderful community event. I don't have the fundraising numbers yet, but again, I just like to congratulate Dan and Jessica for spearheading this, and hopefully we will continue in the spirit of community and giving back at this time of year. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. November 21st, I attended also the Belvedere Municipal Stakeholder meeting that talked about the business model. On the 22nd, I had the pleasure of attending the Light Up the Park, and I thought that was a wonderful event. I thought that Ms. McNamara, Ali Weeks, the staff overall at Bobby Orr Community Center, Rotary, Salvation Army, Library Partnership, it was great. And I have to say, I have not even heard of one negative comment. It was just wonderful what people are still saying. So I want to say it was really great that staff got together and provided ideas just to start with to get the ball rolling. And our tree in the center looks lovely, so everybody did a fine job, and I say that just shows Parry Sound, we can be a leader. Moving on to Breakfast with Santa, I thought I'd take that in, and also the craft fair that was down at the Stocky Center to show community participation. That was great to see that. It has been mentioned about the planning board meeting, but I attended the draft budget meeting prior to the planning board meeting, so I had that fun too. I attended the strategic planning open house. There is about 20 people there. I feel a public open house is very important because there still is people, and there still are, people that do not use a computer, and there's times where people want to come out face to face and talk to staff. So it's there. If people use it, that's good. People use the computer, that's great, but we need to have a variety of opportunities to present ideas, so I think that was really done well. The Provincial Offenses Association, I went to that meeting. There the draft budget was approved. There were minimal changes compared to last year. We discussed the computer software, and again, as it already passed the town of Parry Sound, but default fines and tax rolling for the future so that other municipalities may get on board with that also, and the importance of maintaining court operation security. Then I went on the following day, and I had some fun actually again in the way that I got to help decorate the town's Olympia vehicle and the town truck for the Christmas parade. So that was kind of nice. I could always put that in my resume for extra fun. I attended the CPR holiday train, and then of course on the Saturday for the Santa Claus parade, I had the privilege of walking behind the Olympia, and I think that I did a fine job singing and wishing people well wishes for Christmas time. And I have to say, Ms. Phillips, the finance director who had her children with her, she did a fine job too. Not only the children handing out candies, but she was very tolerant of my singing. So I want to thank her for that also. So that's my report.
Thank you. Council staff and public, November 20th, Councillor Keith and I met with OPP Command. November 21st was the District Social Services Board meeting, which was held here in Parry Sound, and we were presented with the draft budget. November 22nd was the Light Up the Park event in Market Square Park, and I'd like to thank April McNamara and our Parks and Recreation staff for the work that they did in the park. And as Councillor Keith said, people were very happy with the lights. And it was also the Salvation Army Kettle Kickoff as well. So they were there, and Rotary, which Rotary works with the Salvation Army to put food baskets together for people at Christmas time. So we certainly congratulate that. As a note, please support the Salvation Army and Harvest Shares. These organizations and their volunteers work very hard to provide a good Christmas for those in need. November 24th, I attended the one-of-a-kind craft show for Christmas at the Stocky Center, and I'd like to thank Diane Collison and our Stocky Center staff and all the vendors for making the weekend a special event. And I got a note today from Nicole Mullen on some stats for the event, and there were 842 people went through the door for the one-of-a-kind Christmas and artisan show. And The event raised approximately $10,000 for the building, which was good to know as well. And it seems to keep growing each year, so that's all good and positive. November 25th at 9:30 a.m., I was in Toronto and attended standing committee at Queen's Park to make a presentation on Bill 132. And then on November 25th at 6 p.m., I was back in town to attend the District Land Ambulance meeting here at the Fire Hall, and we discussed and made recommendations on the budget, and there are items on the agenda tonight from the Advisory Committee. November 28th and 29th, I attended the AMO Executive and AMO Board meetings in Toronto, and on the 29th, I want to thank Councillor Bachman for attending the CP Holiday Train event. And it is a very well attended event, and I certainly want to thank CP for their support through Harvest Share for our community, and the people that brought food and produce or whatever for Harvest Share as well. They usually walk away with a few truckloads, and that support is greatly appreciated. I will say that we do have a very kind and giving and sharing community that does a great deal of outreach, and everyone needs to be proud of what they do. November 30th was the Santa Claus Parade. Excellent parade. I'd like to thank all those who organized and participated in the parade. This year we managed to get back up here to the town office and actually walk back down towards the Bobby Orr Community Center, and actually we're able to see Santa Claus this year. So the parade was, I think, longer and more floats, so it seemed that way because I was actually able to do that, where other years you were not quite there or whatever. So at the BOCC, there was the Soup for the Soul event, which was put on by Hospice, and a great event with a lot of different kinds of soups to sample. And I want to thank Hospice for their volunteers for putting on the event, and to all those who donated soups, thank you as well. And I will say that for the Santa Claus Parade and for the Soup for the Soul, our MPP Norm Miller and MP Scott Aitchison were on hand for both events, which was really, really good. December 2nd, I attended the One Table Bridging the Community Dinner that Councillor Horn mentioned. It was held at the Stocky Center. Proceeds went to Harvest Share and Community Living, and they thank Jessica Vergier and Dan DiNicolo at the Chamber of Commerce to help support the event. And I'd certainly like to thank all those that donated food for the event and the volunteers that put it together. And of note, there were 13,929 is the total number of times that people used Harvest Share program in 2018. So that number is 13,929. That's quite a bit for our area. So obviously very, very needed. Also, the strat plan was mentioned, and I was there for the events that we certainly needed to be, and I'd like to thank all those that did participate in the strategic planning event for their input. It is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank our staff for the work that they did around the process. I mean, it's still not over with yet, but for being there to help through the process, and Red Brick Communication, which was there to run the actual process. But you know, Dave Thompson and some of their crew and other volunteers and staff were there to work through that during those sessions. So I'd also like to remind the public that nominations are open for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound, our community's highest honor for achievement. This is the 19th year of the Order, which has the motto, "They desire a better community." If you know a resident of or contributor to the town of Parry Sound who is making a difference in our community, who is enriching the lives of others in our community, consider nominating them for the 2019 Order of Parry Sound. Nomination forms can be found on the town's website or at the municipal office reception desk. Deadlines for submission of nominations is December 13th. The order is awarded annually at the Mayor's Levy, held on which will be held January 5th, 2020, and will be held upstairs at the Bobby Orr Community Center from noon until 2 p.m. This year, the municipal office will be closed for the holiday period from Tuesday, December 24th to January 1st inclusive, and the office will reopen Thursday, January the 2nd at 8:30 a.m. Now, Peter Brown's retirement is approaching at the end of this month, and with that, I want to offer congratulations and a few comments. Peter Brown started with the town almost 9 years ago on January 24th, 2011. Peter brought 20 years of progressive experience as a manager in the municipal public works sector. He held previous positions of Director of Operations for the town of Huntsville and Environmental and Property Operations Manager with the Township of Minden Hills. During his time here, Peter has provided leadership to the biggest department in the town, with high public profile operations including roads and sidewalks construction and maintenance, water and sewer systems, waste transfer station, and cemetery. Under Mr. Brown, some big projects undertaken over the last few years included road reconstruction on Wakefield, Dufferin, Emily, Forest, Isabella, and Wabick Streets, to name just a few. Inspections of water and sewer waste transfer systems have consistently received excellent reviews, with outstanding remarks received this year. Mr. Brown has provided significant support to the Wellness Center and Pool Steering Committee on our area-wide quest for this new center. And Mr. Brown, as your retirement is now in sight with only one council meeting after this one remaining, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of all of council to extend our gratitude for your dedication to the town and wish you the heartiest congratulations of your retirement, and also say thank you for making sure that the water treatment system has been always up to snuff so we don't go to jail. And we appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and everyone. I assume then that I still have to go to one more council meeting.
According to my script, I guess you do.
No, I appreciate all your kind words, and it's been an interesting road. It's been a bit rocky, as recently as tonight, but it's an interesting job. There's a lot of work to do in this town, and I've enjoyed the work that we've done. We have a great group of staff here. We have a great group of people who work for the town, and I think that's your biggest asset. And I think all of you realize that. It's just something that we all have to remind each other that all the staff are a great group of people to work with. So I thank you all very much for your kind words, and we'll see you probably at a Tim Hortons donut shop or something like that in the future. Thank you.
Okay, so on with the resolutions and stuff. So there was the report that was asked to be done at the last meeting, which was received for information purposes, which was moved by Councillor Bornham and seconded by Councillor Burden, that sidewalk repairs and replacement report 2015 to 2019 be received for information purposes. Discussion, I think, Mr. Brown, can you give an overall update on what has been done and what has been spent?
Your Worship, thank you. This was an interesting process because I sat down with our foreman. We went through the last 5 years, starting as recently as starting this year, and we worked our way back. And it's quite impressive the amount of work that we have done on our sidewalks, not just the capital side of things, like as an example, Isabella and Wabick, Prospect Street, going back, Bow Street, William Street, Isabella, sections of that. But it's also the operating side of things. Staff, when you see on the report it says operating in brackets, that's the work that staff has done, as well as contractors for the town. So, like in 2019, we spent $61,000 on repairs. In 2018, it was $33,000. In 2017, it was $109,000. So it's clear that we have spent a significant amount of money. And again, this does not include the capital amount that we've been spending over the last 5 years. I also want to say is further to this report, and I mentioned this earlier, and this was part of the 2019 budget. We've hired a contractor called StreetScan, which actually reviews all the streets in town, but also we've hired them to do all the sidewalks. So it gives us a completely reliable and blank look at as far as the sidewalks go and what needs to be done related to the Ministry of Transportation and the rules and regulations as far as trip hazards, as far as width of sidewalk, as far as construction of sidewalk. So that report is, we were hoping it was going to be done in November, but it should be done shortly. When that's done, Council will provide a bit of a report and maybe a show on it. But it's very interesting because they're basically going to give us a very detailed description of every single piece of sidewalk in Parry Sound. They actually walked it with a machine and measured everything about it. So that will assist Public Works and the town of Parry Sound in future endeavors on where sidewalks need to be done as far as priority goes. And specific locations of what needs to be done right away, and then they'll give you a list of priorities. But as far as this report goes, it's just for information purposes to identify and show council the significant amount of money that we have spent on sidewalks in the last 5 years. It should be noted that the sidewalk that we did on Bow Street from Forest to Albert Street was paved over with asphalt, as most people know. This was purely a staff decision. It was felt that the existing concrete sidewalk on the opposite side of Bow Street was there. So we wanted to provide a better service for accessibility on the hospital side, so we paved that section over. As well, there were certain sections of that sidewalk that needed significant repairs. There was a manhole actually right in the middle of one of the sidewalks that we couldn't fix unless we dug it all up. So we paved over it, so that created basically a buffer to allow better accessibility over that particular section. And we were quite happy with the work. The downside of asphalt, as you can see now, is it's starting to fade. It's starting to split. Some of the sidewalk plows are starting to dig in. So we have to be cognizant of that when we're considering any future work for asphalt versus concrete. But again, this is for information purposes. Only if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So the amount, I'm sorry, this is for council. So the copy will be made available at a later date. But so my question is, so the sidewalk repairs alone, which is replacement and repairs, over 5 years is $261,533. That is just what the town did, or capital is beyond that? Like during Tuthope Street and all those other streets that we ended up putting sidewalks in around the schools, that sort of thing.
Yeah, through your worship, that 261,000 is purely operational repairs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does not include the Tuthope, the Dennis, the Isabella, all those capital projects that we've done, which include sidewalks.
Okay. Is there a way of breaking that out of those contracts to find out what a total would be for capital and operational?
Your worship, absolutely. Later. That will take some time, but yes, we can break that out because when tenders are awarded, there are specific line items for sidewalks.
Right.
So we can pull that out, including they'll also include the distances for those capital projects.
Okay. I'm just thinking that, we're going to have this committee started, and, there's going to be an accessibility one, and we'll have people come in that can be on the committee. And I think they need to know what we're beginning with, and I think the report that you've mentioned is extremely valuable for that committee, so that we know, the condition of the sidewalks in various areas and what needs to be repaired, what has been repaired and worked on. And the recognition that we cannot afford to do everything all at once, that it is done over a period of time. And, we identify some of the greatest need first and work backwards, because we do have a capital plan, and a capital plan needs to be followed. And we have an asset management plan as well. And these are all part of the town's assets and capital moving forward. So, I think this information is extremely important. We can pile more information into it so that we have that, and hopefully moving forward, there's a better understanding as to where we are and where we're going. Any comments, questions from council? No? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Unfortunately,
No, it seems like this is not
you're out
fair.
of.
It's not fair, because when I asked stuff from you, like, to speak, and you're denying it, and it's just that this is a form, when you're talking about stuff that you say ask questions, when someone does have a question that's sitting out at the audience that wants to speak about that question, they should have the right to speak about it.
Excuse me, but we do have a procedural bylaw, and we try to follow that procedural bylaw. And there are times for speaking, and there are times for not. And at this particular time, we have received the report which council agreed to do because of your request for wanting information and knowing it. You will be provided with that information, which I think because it's all taken staff time, and there will be more information compounded with it. And I think also, council also agreed to an accessibility committee so that it can be taken a look at in various areas in town where we need accessible issues, because we do have to, there's compliance by 2025. You had your, excuse me, you had your opportunity. I don't think you understand that this is an order of government. And an order of government needs to proceed within its procedural bylaws. There is a time for speaking, and there is a time when we need to conduct business. And right now, we are conducting business. It has nothing, I am trying to be very polite here, okay, in conduct, okay? So I would request that if you have a question, you refer the question to the clerk tomorrow, and the answers hopefully can be provided to you. But right now, this is a place of business that we need to conduct. So I request politely that you refrain from interrupting the meeting. We had our opportunity during deputations, but I had a terribly full agenda of deputations tonight, so there was no extra time. So we do have rules that we have to comply to. So I thank you for being here tonight to listen to the report. The next item, please. Item 912, it's moved by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Borneman. The report, Councillor Horn.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to apologize. I forgot to declare a conflict for 921, the 2020 land ambulance budget.
Oh.
I meant to, and I think I was so excited that Heidi was presenting, I forgot. So I would just like to apologize again, and just
you got big eyes and they just went out,
yeah,
right? So okay.
I just like to apologize. So I will fill out the necessary paperwork after the council meeting.
Yeah.
So
I think you're okay on 922A,
the purchases, yes,
because that has really nothing
yes.
to do with the health center. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, 912, which is the report on pedestrian crossings at Wabick Street and Avenue Belvedere intersections be received for information purposes. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? And that's carried. Item 921, this is the one that yep. So it's moved by Councillor Burden and seconded by Councillor Borneman that upon the recommendation of the EMS Advisory Committee, the Council of the Town of Parry Sound approves the 2020 land ambulance budget in the amount of $9,995,709. Any discussion? Councillor Borneman.
How does this fit in with the province's actions last year with respect to downloading? What, if any, impact are we expecting from them with respect to any of these costs as we move forward?
I'll let the chief start.
And I'm guessing, no one knows until it happens,
Yeah.
but we should be anticipating.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no one knows until it happens. Yeah. I think you are absolutely correct. Initially, it looked like there was going to be massive changes in the EMS industry through whatever the Ministry of Health was going to be doing, similar to health units. That's not so certain anymore, nor is how they're going to be adjusting funding levels or service levels, or quite frankly, anything of that nature. So I had a conversation with Deborah from the health center before the meeting, and it's no more clear from their end either as being the operator. They're not hearing anything that we aren't hearing. So I don't have a whole lot of new news other than that we're conducting business as usual leading into 2020 as we have in the past 20 years since we've been looking after land ambulance.
The one bonus is we did get some extra funding this year, which helped us with regard, as it's in your report, with the our service provider. So we've, we're okay, but we'll know better next year, I guess, when Mr. Pine's report comes back to the Ministry of Health. So, anything further on the budget? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 922A, moved by, we can get Councillor Horn back in here. So again, it was moved by Councillor Bachman and seconded by Councillor Keith that upon the recommendation of the EMS Advisory Committee, the Council of the Town of Parry Sound approves the replacement of 2 ambulances to be delivered in late winter 2020, and further that the supplier of record, Crestline, be awarded the contract for the supply of these 2 ambulances in the amount of $129,427.21 plus HST each. Said ambulance is funded from the EMS Equipment Reserve Fund, and that upon delivery of the 2020 ambulances, the 2 being replaced be deemed surplus and donated to the first response teams within the district of Parry Sound. Discussion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Keith.
Yes, I have one question for Mr. Thompson. I realize the importance of having all of our emergency vehicles really up to snuff and being very efficient in that. And I recognize that each time that we make the purchases, we again donate the surplus to some sort of a first response team, or if it was a fire vehicle, a fire department in one of the other communities. But I still wonder, is there any way that there can be some sort of in-kind service that we can get back for these donations? Like, it just seems to me there must be some way that we can get some sort of a service back.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we get absolutely phenomenal in-kind service back through the first response teams. Would they still participate in the first response program? Most likely, yes. But what we're providing them is a reliable vehicle for their purposes to locally respond to medical emergencies. And we must remember that most of these vehicles, when we do donate them to first response teams or fire departments, are going into places like Argyle or Whitestone or Kearney, which have significant EMS response times as compared to what we get to enjoy here in the town of Parry Sound or in Seguin, because they have a base there, or near Point of Barrow. So there are significant benefits to supporting the first response teams. I don't believe there's I don't know, it's more of a finance question, I guess, if there's donation receipts or things like that. I don't believe that is something that can be done within, and I see the treasurer nodding her head at me, that's not something that can be done through a government function or a government agency like we are. So the in-kind benefit is supporting the emergency health services in the more remote areas within the district.
So my follow-up comment then, it's another way of partnershiping is what I heard.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, EMS has a fantastic partnership with really all the fire departments. They rely on each other heavily, from the fire departments transporting medics into remote areas, or such as this, a fire department being able to get on scene and starting CPR as quickly as possible while waiting for an ambulance to come. Emergency services works in a very cooperative fashion. We have a fantastic working relationship amongst all the emergency response services in the district.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Horn, seconded by Councillor Keith. Upon the recommendation of the EMS Advisory Committee, the Council of the Town of Parry Sound approves the replacement of one paramedic response unit, otherwise known as a PRU, to be supplied by Roland Emergency Vehicle in the amount of $70,475, plus HST, said PRU, funded from EMS Equipment Reserve Fund. Discussion. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 923, moved by Councillor Backman and seconded by Councillor Horn, that Councillor Horn and Councillor Keith be reappointed to the Parry Sound Committee of Adjustment until December 31st, 2020. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Now, item 924. We have a mover and seconder for the direction. Councillor Keith, Councillor Backman. The Council of the Town of Parry Sound receives the reparking report and directs staff to bring the proposed changes forward in January 2020. Discussion. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Chief Thompson, perhaps maybe just for the public's benefit, we could get a bit of a summary as to what this was about. I know that it was a major concern to people a few weeks ago, and thank you for addressing it so quickly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You don't need to thank me because I've addressed it quickly. We've been looking at this issue for a few months, actually. It was noted throughout this summer primarily. Let me go back. I apologize. We changed from a metered parking system to a complementary parking system 3 to 4 years ago. The complementary parking system, the previous metered parking system utilized money to get people to move on out of their parking spaces, to create a cycle of parking spaces within the downtown. That's the intent of the system. When we moved away from a metered parking system, you need to still encourage individuals to move out of their parking spots. That is to increase business opportunities in the downtown for the businesses that operate in that area. There needs to be a constant turnover of people coming down to provide or to take a look at those services, or to utilize those businesses, The way to do that without meters is through parking regulations and then necessarily parking tickets. Parking tickets don't generate a whole lot of revenue for the municipality. They're utilized to encourage people to not stay in their parking spot too long. So we set 2-hour, as you're well aware, we set 2-hour limits on streets, 4-hour limits in parking lots. People who want to stay in downtown longer were encouraged to go to parking lots. People who were coming in to utilize businesses and services during the daytime, such as the lawyers' offices, insurance brokers, banks, parking on the street, they can hop into their store and get out before they get a parking ticket. One problem with this system is that previously, under a metered system, people could just feed the meter and they weren't going to get any tickets. And we've created a culture of people doing that. When we changed to the new system of having no meters and utilizing parking tickets, there was going to be a need to change that culture of people just staying, people who work downtown or ran businesses downtown, staying in those parking spots and simply moving ahead one spot or back one spot. The way to do that in the industry is through a system called no reparking. Very confusing concept, and what it means is that you get to stay in a parking spot once on any particular day in a designated area. We set that up as individual areas being lots or streets, and tackled the problem in that fashion. That brings us to this year. The system that we put in place seemed to be doing its job and working well. This year, in talking to the bylaw officers, we started to realize that the people who were getting reparking tickets were not who we knew to be the offenders that were just moving their vehicles forward to try to stay downtown all day long to either go to work or operate their business. So we identified that this summer. And we started talking about it then, saying, we think we're penalizing the wrong people. We have had in the past couple of years one particular business owner come to us who didn't like the system, and he brainstormed with us, and we thought about ideas and solutions, and we couldn't come up with anything better than the reparking in working with that one particular gentleman. Later on early this fall, we had one person who got extremely irate over getting a reparking ticket, and rightly so. They had come down to utilize a business. They weren't working downtown. They weren't abusing the system. It reinforced for us at that time that the reparking regulation was not anymore doing what it ever intended to do. So we had been discussing that we should be making a change as early as August this year. With the heightened media attention to the issue, it was decided that we should be bringing a report sooner rather than later to council's attention, letting them know what our intentions were. In the fall, we contacted the DBA. We talked to them about this issue. We said we think we've identified what has now become a problem, and that reparking is not doing what it was intended to do anymore. They agreed with us. They took it to their board, and since most recently they have gotten back to us and said that, yeah, we agree with you, and we would like you to rescind those reparking components of the bylaw. So that's the intention. That's what we're planning on doing. We'll be bringing that back in January for council's deliberation, and that takes us from when we started complimentary parking till now.
So as I'll put this out there because we're at Christmas season right now. People are downtown shopping and that sort of thing. If someone gets one of the double parking tickets that has been legitimately at the bank, shopping, wherever, and gone away and then come back and done something and they end up with a ticket, if they can show a receipt for some type of a transaction receipt, whether it's something done at the bank or whether it's something they bought at a store, it has the date on it, that sort of thing. If they present that, can we take care of that particular ticket to say, it is a customer, they are legitimately using a service downtown, they're not just there parking for the day, sort of thing? Is that something that we could do to mitigate some of this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a plan, and I'm happy to tell you about how we will mitigate in the immediate future this particular issue until council actually changes the bylaw. It's very difficult for us to do, as you suggest, because it's extremely important that bylaw enforcement enforces the regulations in a consistent, non-partisan fashion, which means that we never target. We know who the offenders of all these regulations are. We're down there all the time. We absolutely know it. But we can't just go after that person. If we ever did that, and it could be shown that we were doing that, the justice would stop allowing us to get convictions on all our tickets. They would take that very poorly. However, what we can do with this discussion tonight is stop enforcing this component of the bylaw altogether, which is what I'm suggesting to do once we approve the bylaw in January anyways. In that fashion, we will be consistently applying it across everyone. No one will be getting a reparking ticket for the rest of the year until we get clear approval from council to remove this regulation.
Okay, all right, good enough.
I hope that's acceptable.
Okay. Good. All right. Any further comments, discussion on this? Nope. All in favor? That's carried then, thank you. Item 931, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Horn, that a staff update on the Town of Parry Sound Culture Parks and Recreation Plan be received for information purposes. Discussion. Councillor Bachman.
Being that Ms. McNamara is present, if she can just provide us with an update, that'd be great. Thank you.
Through your worship, Cole's Notes version of the report as provided to council this evening would be A, the project is not going to happen in 2019. B, we'll be looking at doing this project on our own. There was no uptake for our invitation to participate from area municipalities or the First Nations. I have started working on a draft request for proposals for consultative services for this report to happen, and that will be presented to council sometime in January.
Any further comments, questions? No? Okay. Ms. McNamara, thank you very much for the report and all the work that's been done on it, and it's kind of too bad we have to do it alone because it will benefit the whole area. Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that whereas the province announced the provision of the Municipal Modernization Program, which is a funding program to identify efficiencies, now therefore be resolved that staff be authorized to indicate to the province the town's expression of interest and subsequently submit an application for municipal modernization funding resulting in a third-party assessment of opportunities to utilize information technology to achieve efficiencies, taking into consideration needs, resource requirements, best practices, and also the identification of costs, saving / sharing with other municipalities through shared technology opportunities. I wonder what kind of a response we'll get from the others on this one. Anything further? Councillor Keith.
Yes, I have two questions. One has to do with the application. Is the application actually ready to go and we just need approval tonight? That's my first question.
Through the mayor, the application is due on Friday. It's a fairly short application. More detail will be provided later on, and we'll be ready for Friday.
My follow-up question to that, once or if we get approval, I'm being positive here, but if we get approval, what sort of timeline would there be involved in respect to a study?
We'd have to go through an RFP process to get somebody on board. I would think once an organization is on board, and we're working with the Archipelago, and they've already identified a possible firm, and we're thinking about piggybacking with them. Might get some savings, but the work itself might take 3 months, let's say.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear the Archipelago's on board. Yeah. Councillor Bachman.
Thank you. My question for Mr. Harris. At the end of all this, what do we see coming to fruition on this, if this is successful?
If we get the funding, the objective, technology is going to be one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, that is going to change how we do business in not only the municipality, but in many areas, like we heard from the hospital earlier this evening. So this report, the objective of this exercise is to identify a technology strategy going forward and where we see the biggest opportunities in the municipality. Places where we might automate, whether the biggest opportunities to gain efficiencies. The exercise of looking at what our neighbors do in terms of their technology. There's 7 municipalities. Do we have common platforms? Do we each have a different general ledger system? Do we each have a separate tax system and building permit system and so on and so on? So that's just kind of early stages to look at, not really to get us working together at this point, but at least identify some areas where there might be some possibilities. As tax systems come up for, you need to implement a new system, update it, upgrade it, maybe we at least buy the same system. And ideally, perhaps at some point, maybe we all operate off one system that serves all area municipalities. So this is very early stages to look at what those opportunities might be. The main focus, though, is what we do in the town here and what efficiencies might there be through technology.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Horn that council hereby receives and accepts the variance report for the third quarter 2019, September 30th, 2019, and further that council hereby approves the expenses for council members for the period of July 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2019. Discussion. All in favor? That's carried. Oh yeah, 951, it was the number given for Councillor Horn's with regard to the interviewing committee. So, Councillor Horn, you have the floor.
Thank you. I was selected to participate in the replacement of Peter Brown for the Director of Operations. When I saw the candidate list, I need to declare a conflict. So I'm just asking if there is another councillor that would like to take my place tomorrow evening from 5 to 8-ish, maybe 4:30 to 8:30-ish, maybe 5 to 9-ish. So it's tomorrow night. So again, I just want to ensure that everything is open and transparent. Thank you.
It's really 5 to probably 7 or 8, but you know, if you can be early, we can provide some background information on the applicants. But it's tomorrow evening.
My microphone was off. Sorry, moved by Councillor Burden and seconded by Councillor McCann that bylaw number 2019-6996 being a bylaw to execute the Stewardship Ontario MHWS amending service agreement and amend bylaw 2008-5281 be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. If you can, just of note, watch. I've been trying to send the what comes out of our AMO meetings, whatever that I can submit. So I try to send that to council, plus the watch file, because there are things that are happening with regard to Stewardship Ontario and waste management and that sort of thing. So we want to keep our eye on it. Actually, I think there will be a letter coming from AMO to the municipalities as well, with some information directly. So, item 10.1.2, moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2019-6997, being a bylaw to execute the encroachment agreement with the owner of 4 River Street, to be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Burden, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? No. Councillor Borneman?
I wonder if Mr. Brown could give us the public the Coles Notes version of what we're up to here in this one.
Thank you, through your worship. This is another one of those encroachment agreements that we've been trying to catch as businesses change hand, or if properties are being developed. We found that this particular place at 4 River Street, it encroaches on municipal property from several inches to approximately a little over 2 feet at one end. So, and that building's been there for many, many years. So somebody has bought it recently, and they're looking at developing it, changing it up. So they want to make sure that all their ducks are lined up. And since some of the building is on town property, they've requested an encroachment agreement to make it all legitimate.
Okay, Councillor McCann.
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Brown, does the encroachment agreement survive another sale of the property, or is it grandfathered into the next sale?
I believe it's grandfathered in the next sale. It's a permanent agreement for that particular property.
Great, thanks.
Any further discussion? No. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2019-6998, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2011-6029 to continue the electronic waste agreement and to reflect the change in ownership from Global Electronic preceding GEEP to Quantum Life Cycle Partners LP, and to execute the notice of assignment to confirm the Town of Parry Sound's agreement with the change in ownership be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann. The bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion on this? It's just basically an ownership change of the company, so. All in favor then? That's carried. Item 10.2.1, moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Bachman, that bylaw number 2019-6999, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-4653, the zoning bylaw as amended for Z 1914 20-12 College Drive, M2 Developments Incorporated, Gardens of Parry Sound be considered as read the first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Bachman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Mr. Elgie's been sitting patiently, so let's avail ourselves to him at this point and find out what this is all about.
Essentially, the applicant wishes to build a 60-unit either retirement residence or apartment building geared towards elderly individuals who are in a transition stage in their housing. They've asked for a parking reduction, so depending on the form of building, a different parking reduction will apply. The request has been heavily amended since it first came in due to staff and neighboring concerns, and the applicant supports staff's recommendations. So the bylaw in front of you is recommended by staff, is acceptable to the applicant, and although the neighboring property owner solicitor couldn't say that it was that their client was okay with it, they think it should be.
Okay. Councillor Borneman.
Mr. Elgie, during the public meeting that was held with respect to this item, there were specific comments made regarding parking. And I just, I think I heard you say there were parking reductions requested, and I just wonder if if all of those things jive, if we're going to satisfy the neighbors, the folks at the gardens, and the proponent for this application.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I forgot to mention the barrier-free parking requirements have actually doubled from the bylaw's typical standards, because that was mentioned at the public meeting. You're correct, and I forgot to mention that. The general parking provisions, they've been reduced if it's an apartment building from 1.25 spaces per unit to 1.15. If they do a special form of retirement residence, which we had to craft a new definition, it would be 1 parking space per unit because each unit has a kitchen. So our thoughts were if people can cook for themselves, they're likely going to be able to drive for themselves. So the typical requirement of 0.33 spaces per bed was not logical. So this bylaw, depending on the form of use, the parking requirement goes up and down. But generally, I feel it represents good planning and won't lead to any land use conflicts, and especially by doubling the amount of barrier-free spaces.
Okay, Councillor Keith.
Well, for me, I'm not really clear for doubling. How many spaces does that mean that there would be barrier-free? You said they're doubled, so what's the number?
Through your worship, typically the bylaw requires 1 space per 30 units. In this case, it'll be 1 space per 30 spaces. In this case, it'll be 2 barrier-free spaces per 30 required parking spaces. So if they did a 60-unit apartment, I believe that comes out to 4 barrier-free spaces.
Well, I'm just going to say 4 barrier spaces doesn't really seem like a lot, given that I think there's a good number of people that are at that, will be at the gardens and are already there. I think that the concerns that we heard that would suggest to me 4 spaces is certainly a small number. That's the best we can come up with.
Through your worship, if council would like to increase it beyond that, double what the minimum standard is, you're more than welcome to do so. I felt this was a reasonable compromise from the provincial standards to go double, but I would say if we're going to go beyond it, though, we might want to table this and bring it back so some thought and maybe some analysis municipalities can be done, and we're not changing a bylaw on the fly because that's not really advisable.
Councillor Keith.
I think that we should table it and get some more information because, like I said, I don't think that the number that's being presented here is really true to what the concern is.
Is there a seconder? Table. Councillor Borneman. Okay. Can we bring this back to the next meeting?
I would ask that question to the CAO because I believe that's a special meeting.
Through the mayor, what we were trying to do, and just from a practical matter, we were trying to keep all items off next agenda unless they're urgent, because the consultants are doing a workshop with council, open to the public, but a workshop on the strategic planning, which may take an hour or so or longer. And so we're just trying to keep items to an absolute minimum. So it's if council wants to bring this forward to the next meeting, I think staff have the time. It's just
I'd like to see it come back because I'd like to see it moving. So, yeah. So we're good with next meeting? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. December, what's the date?
December 17th.
Okay. All right. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Backman. The bylaw number 2019-7000, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Backman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? That's carried. So prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, December 17th, 2019 at 7 p.m. and will be held in the council chambers, top floor of 52 Seguin Street. Public access to the building is off Gibson Street. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Regular and special meetings are now live streamed. Please check news and public notices on our website at www.parrysound.ca for instructions to watch live or to see earlier council meetings. Agendas, changes to the council meeting schedule, and notices of special council meetings will be posted on the town's website at www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices prior to a council meeting. The public is able to view the electronic copy of the complete agenda with attachments on the town's website. Just search council calendar and the date of the meeting. Should you wish to receive the combined agenda via email, you may make that request on our website or contact the clerk at the municipal office. The minutes of the council meetings will be posted within 2 days after the council meeting on the town's website. Your TV will continue to air the regular Parry Sound council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. As a reminder, I reported earlier, nominations for the deadline of the Order of Parry Sound is Friday, December 13th. Check the town's website or office for nomination forms and more information. And the municipal office will be closed over the holiday season from Wednesday, December 24th to January 1st inclusive. I have one more question before I say goodnight. So the next meeting will be televised?
Yes, the same as all meetings.
Same as always. Okay, all right, just making sure. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
So here's